A few housekeeping notes. We do want this to be interactive. Feel free to drop questions. We'll pause a few times throughout just to try to give people time to ask questions. We'll also leave some time at the end. You can use the chat. We've got some other G2ers on the line as well who can help jump in and answer things in the chat as well. And we're happy to do follow-ups if you have questions about your specific setup, things that maybe we're not going to get into in detail today. These are always recorded, so you can revisit it later. And we've got all the past recordings and everything available on our website, as well as great trainings in G2 University. Just, again, I think we went over this a little bit there, but casual today, please do jump in. Feel free to come on camera if you want during the Q&A or just interact with us however we can help. We are here to really just be a resource for you today. And please also share with each other if you have great ideas for other marketers on the line. So today we wanted to cover these kind of go-to-market impact topics because, like I said, we know it's not always as straightforward as it sounds. We also know there are many, many different features of G2, and you may be using them in different ways. There may be some you haven't tried yet, some things you haven't set up yet. So we'll cover a lot of those. We are going to be going through them kind of through the lens of our different packages. So we'll just start with a little refresher on the names and things, what's in the different packages, what functionality they offer, so that as we're going through the metrics and measures, you have that grounding in kind of the terminology we may be using if you're not as familiar with it as some of us. We will share some client case study examples to give you some inspiration on the metrics that other people are tracking for their success, as well as maybe some kind of best-in-class benchmarking. What types of results have they had that maybe you can aspire to or use as, kind of a goalpost for some of your similar efforts. And then we will leave time for Q&A as well. So with that, let's jump in. I alluded to this a little bit, but one of the reasons that we chose this topic is because we know that your G2 profile, your G2 content, your badges, everything that goes along with G2, and even your intent data is woven into this complex modern buying process. So I thought when I was thinking about this, that I would think about it through a lens of a purchase that I had made that was not software. I'm sure many of us have purchased software as well, but sometimes it's nice to just kind of think of other examples from our life. So that's my family there in the middle. And a few years ago when I had my second child, I realized that we needed a larger family SUV. And so went about that journey of what I would consider like a considered purchase, very much like a software, right? This is a big investment. This is something that I'm going to have for many, many years. I'm one of those people who likes to pay off the car and then keep it for a long time and kind of, I won't say run it into the ground, but, get good life out of it. So this is a long-term and a big decision, obviously a big investment, lots of research to be done there. So once I decided I had this need, some of the things I did over there on this, how did I make my decision side? Obviously, I went and searched, got best, 3-row SUVs for families because I decided I was not going to do the minivan. I wanted to do the SUV. So I had that in mind. I started watching a lot of videos on YouTube. As I narrowed down my short list, I would start watching more specific videos. So I watched like car seat installation comparisons between this car and this car. How many car seats can I fit? Things like that. Of course, like resource sites like Kelley Blue Book, where there are reviews and I can get pricing data and other types of rankings that might rank the best SUVs. I use Facebook these days mostly for groups. So I have mom groups that I'm a part of there where I might ask them what's working for them. And then like looking around. So what are my neighbors driving? What am I seeing in the daycare parking lot? This is, several weeks of research as I'm going on this journey and making decisions. And it's likely that none of those things are showing up at the dealership. When I walk in, I test drive. I walked in, I knew what I wanted. Really, I had a very short list. I test drove 2 cars and I bought one kind of that same day that I walked in. So just to take this example of all of the things that I went through to make that purchasing decision, and the dealership, when I walked in, had no idea, right? So like their lead source, if you will, if we're just kind of playing with this in our B2B terms, they may be like, direct to website, direct purchase. They came to my site, they purchased right away. But also there were all these things happening behind the scenes that were maybe harder to capture and see. And so that's a lot of what's happening with B2B and some of these types of places, like watching video reviews, reading reviews, talking to peers and people like you, are a lot of the things that are happening on G2 or with the G2 information that you're putting out into the world. that may not always show up in that what we would think of like as a direct impact tracking. And so we'll talk about some direct and indirect things you can measure to see how G2 is performing on your go-to-market. I'm happy with my car purchase, by the way. This was a few years ago, and I'm still driving it today. So the research paid off. All right, I promised we would set the stage just by going over the common terminology and packages, just so that everybody's kind of starting with the same base of knowledge. So if you haven't seen, we did actually change our packaging just a few months ago. And so some of this is different language, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to ground in it today. But we do have these modular packages that you can build your own G2 package with now. And the common terms you'll hear us talking about today: core, review growth. Those are your kind of profile and review gathering tools. Buyer intent, you're probably familiar with, which gives you insight into who's on your profile, category, competitive comparisons, things like that. G2 content, which is our enhanced licensing for using claims from our reports and rankings, as well as gating the content for your own lead generation purposes. And then market intelligence, our go-to-market strategy and research tool. Those are the names, very simple, like names to products now with our new packaging. If you've been with us for a while, few months, few years, you may be seeing some different names, like Essential, which is the profile and review features, now core and review growth, Essential, or our Pro and Power packages, which encompassed all of those core and review features, as well as buyer intent. So we're going to talk about them in kind of the new names today, but those are the mapping equivalencies if you may be on a different package or not sure which features you have. And so here is just a little snapshot. We're going to dive into each package, but a little snapshot of some of the key metrics that we do see people measuring on these different types of G2 use cases, as well as the departments that we often find involved in using these or tracking these or just wanting to see results from these. So, in some cases, you may see leaders or executives who probably are not in my G2 looking at the referral traffic every day or looking at the profile visits, but they may get report outs through their teams, through some of you sharing that information out. So we're going to dive into each of these, but this is just kind of when you go back and view this, you'll have kind of that snapshot view of all of the packages. And also, other than attending things like this today and kind of going over these high-level metrics, where can you go to set goals and track your growth at G2? We've got a ton of resources, both with your account and customer care teams, as well as with the self-service resources and support. There's great courses in my G2 University. There's great documentation on the site, past webinars, things that you can revisit. And then for your teams, you've got your account manager, who typically at the beginning of your relationship will help you identify and set up a mutual success plan with some of these goals. And then our client services team for ongoing check-ins. Depending on your plan, you may have a CSM that you work with. You may work with our customer care team, which is a group. So we've got lots of different resources to revisit and set goals along the way as your goals change with your products. All right, we're going to dive in to each of those packages. And Rachel is going to take us through our first couple of packages here.
Perfect. As Laura said, I'm Rachel Morris. I lead our product management teams at G2. I've been working closely with our customer-facing teams and our customers directly for the past 3 years to ensure that we understand your needs and that we're building the right tools and services that you need to achieve your goals and see impact on G2. So we're going to go through, as Laura said, by package, a little bit on just how to measure impact on your goals and some of the tools available to improve your ROI, measure it ongoing, as well as customer stories. So I'll pause at the end of this section for any questions, but please don't hesitate to add any questions in chat today or raise your hand if you have a question as we're going through. As we go through each of the packages today, we will cover 2 different types of tracking. There are a lot of metrics that we make available in My G2, which is our self-service solution for you to manage your profile, see your review activity, act on your intent and content. Our goal is to make it easy to track the success metrics that you're achieving with G2 and give you actionable guidance on how you continue to improve your presence and improve your results. However, we also recognize that there are a lot of metrics that you may have in your systems and tools that you use every day where you've brought in G2 data or where you're taking action on the data from G2. And so, we really encourage you and our account managers and customer success teams will work with you to sometimes talk to you through your data and how can we help you to measure that impact? How can we really help you tell the holistic story of the results that you're seeing, or where you're seeing gaps to help you with guidance on how to better use the data or implement it in your systems. So we'll talk about both of those types of metrics today, and we'll show you where they're available in my G2 for those that we have. All right, with that, we are going to start with the core package. As Laura mentioned, if you are a longtime G2 customer, you might think of this as essential. So I'll use core for the most part today, but essential is the name that if you're using it today, all of these features are included as well, and the results that we'll talk about are relevant to your package as well. So core is really all about boosting your brand and buyer exposure. Each of the modules that we have launched in our new packaging is really tailored to have certain metrics and value prop that's tied directly to your goals to measure throughout your partnership with us. So in the core module, all of our customers have access to these features. The goal is really focused on brand visibility and consideration. So our goal is to help you to drive referral traffic to your site from G2. As Laura mentioned, this doesn't always show up as a lead. It may show up as someone who comes from G2 after doing research to learn more on your website, even without raising their hand. We also know that there's a lot of people who are doing their research on G2 to begin with, and we want to maximize total visits to your G2 profile. How can we help you with visibility within G2, but also SEO optimization to help buyers who are starting their search on Google to find your profile and to find the relevant information as they are doing their search. And lastly, we want to help you capture overall influence and demand from G2 on your brand visibility and consideration. Across G2, we see that paid profiles see about 16% of their visitors actually engage with a CTA or a website link to your website after doing research on G2. And for some perspective, when we look at Google AdWords, those see about a 6% click-through rate. LinkedIn ads are less than 1%. So while G2 is one part of your strategy for brand visibility, it's really important to actually maximize your presence on the site and maximize that traffic potential. And so we'll speak through in just a minute here. What are some of the activities that you might be taking to maximize that visibility on the site? Laura, if you can go to the next slide. Perfect. So for each of these sections, we'll speak through a couple actions that you might take to improve your success with G2 and some of the tools that are available to you if you're not using them or not seeing these results today. We do know that, from our buyer behavior report, 90% of customers come to sites like G2 to review data before they ever talk to your sales team. And so while they might not be submitting that lead, we will see many buyers visit your profile on G2 and then come to your website, or vice versa. Start on your site and come to G2 to do further research and understand the competition and the space better. So you can track actually a lot of the clicks between G2 and your site with tools that we've set up for you. So one of those is Track Your Prospects, which provides insights into who is visiting your product profile and how that influences buyer behavior on your website. So it'll help you track visitors who navigate between your G2 product profile and your website and identify those companies for you. It can be tracked directly on your website with a small embed code, or you can track it in Google Tag Manager. And all of that instructions and documentation is available in My G2 to be able to help you get that set up. You can also just set up UTM code tracking from your web link on your G2 profile, which is one of the most heavily clicked pieces of the G2 profile, to come and go to your website after doing research on G2. We also see that customers who see the highest traffic and visibility and who have that conversion from G2 to your website not only have strong review generation, which we'll talk about in a minute, that's a key part of how buyers find value on G2, but simply a more complete profile with content that gives more detail into your brand and your product. So you can see here adding screenshots and videos, as well as interactive demos, are all things that can increase conversion from buyers who find you on G2 or who are doing research on G2 to do further research and convert to your website. So we recommend really auditing your profile and making sure that you're using all the content tools available to increase visibility and then increase conversion as well. Before we talk about review growth, I'll just pause for a minute. Any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, come off mute. Laura and I can definitely talk, but if you have questions, we want to make sure this is most useful for you. So let me just give a pause if anyone has any questions.
I will say, Rachel, just a plug for some of our recorded office hours. If you missed, I think it was just last month, we had a session on optimizing your profile. So if any of that is resonating with you and you're thinking about how you want to get more impact from your profile, the recording is on on sell.g2.com, and it's a great place to dive deep on the profile.
Awesome. All right. Stay quiet. Maybe you're eating lunch right now, and I will keep talking. The second part of our packaging that I'll talk through is our review growth product. Again, as Laura mentioned at the beginning, if you have the essential or any of the essential package or any of our legacy packaging, you also have access to our review tools. In our newer packaging, we've really aligned each of our modules to ensure that you're getting distinct ROI from them. And we have some customers who have strong review gen that they do off of G2. They don't need tools from G2 to do that. And so they may or may not choose to buy review growth in the future. For most of our customers, review growth gives you the tools to really help in your multifaceted review gen program. And so again, for the review growth package, what we'll work with you on is really about increasing review volume, ensuring that you have recent, consistent intake of reviews, and utilizing reviews to accelerate your pipeline and win more deals. So both the ability to collect more reviews, collect consistent review growth, which is a key metric in the G2 algorithm and the G2 grid, as well as really to make sure that you have the tools to use those in your marketing and on your website. So for essential customers, again, these are all included. If you have the new packaging, this is the review growth package that we're talking about. So if you are looking to drive up review collection and better use your reviews, we have lots of tools for you. I'm only going to speak to a couple of them today, but we have lots of tools available to help with driving review collection and to make sure that you can use those reviews across your marketing and across your web presence. So as we go through this section, I'm actually going to start on the right. One area that we've really invested in the last couple of years is around helping find new ways to take in reviews. A lot of our customers, will create a landing page with G2 or create a program in their email signature to be able to just point to G2 to write a review if you're an engaged and active current customer for your service. But we've seen that for a lot of customers, they're looking for new ways to engage, to drive more recent and more reviews from their most engaged customers. And so on the right, you'll see that we've created some new solutions to make it really easy to collect reviews directly in your application or service. So if you have customers who are actively using your product day in and day out, it's a great moment to collect reviews from engaged users, get authentic feedback from them. It's really natural when they're in the moment already using and thinking about your product. We see a pretty high conversion rate for reviewers who are using our in-app review form. And it's a really simple, streamlined form that reduces clicks and friction in collecting a detailed review that's going to really give you some great insight, data, and reviews to be able to use in your marketing materials. We've also launched a number of new integrations with other tools that you may be using. So being able to collect reviews in tools like Pendo or Medallia, Delighted, and then we also just recently launched an integration with Sendoso so that you can not only, so you can look at new ways to incent reviewers and potentially look at using their Sendoso gifting budget and as another integration to offer creative incentives to reviewers who you might be looking to get feedback from. Lastly, on the left, you'll see we have a number of tools available to really help use those reviews in different places on your marketing materials. We recently launched, actually just yesterday, a new widget to be able to spotlight certain reviews on your website. We've taken a brand new approach to how we're going to do that makes it more customizable with your branding than ever. So it fits really naturally and seamlessly into your brand guidelines and on your website, but allows you to feature G2 reviews and show off those authentic feedback from your customers. So these are just a couple tools. Happy to talk through more and different ways that customers have really leveraged those to reach their goals. We want to invest to also partner with you to measure that success and support you if you need help hitting those goals. And so both in My G2 and in your inbox, we provide tools to help you measure the total traffic and the review collection that you're seeing. And your account team is here to partner with you on strategies and tools available to meet your goals. All right. Lastly, before I wrap up and turn it back to Laura, we wanted to bring some of these examples to life with how real customers have captured impact on their go-to-market. So when we talk about reviews and the impact of reviews, this is one of our customers, Flowcast. They really want to scale their review collection to gather more feedback. Some of the things that they were able to, that they were facing was that they recognized how important reviews were, but they were really struggling at scale to gather new reviews. So they were able to achieve really great results from working through different review collection strategies. They got 200 new reviews in their first 6 months, working through a different multi-threaded review collection campaign. They saw a 300% increase compared to year over year, and they moved up in their category in terms of their overall presence on the G2 grid because of the reviews and the review ratings that they had seen through that collection. So they really focused on implementing a multi-channel approach to engage their full customer base. Again, they did in-app experiences. They worked through their email signature. They really focused on who were their most engaged customers, who they could get authentic reviews from, and then tackled a holistic strategy across many of their platforms to create those reviews and to drive those results. So again, just one example of a customer who really sought out to seek to solve this problem and to drive up review growth and use different tools and different strategies from G2 to be able to accomplish that. Hopefully this is a bit of an inspiration for you if this is something you're struggling with, of what they did, as Caitlin linked the Flowcast review campaign case study in a little more depth. They had a really holistic strategy and a lot of great ideas in how they ran through that. So any questions about review gen or how to measure success of those campaigns, things that maybe you're struggling with or things that you're also measuring when you think about the total impact of review gen in your business?
Rachel, I do have a question, please.
Yes,
So,
Angela.
with regards to the Sendosa integration, I can't remember the name of the auditing body, but you know how you're not allowed to ask for a 5-star review, or who is that?
The FTC.
The FTC.
Yes.
What do the FTC say with regard to doing extra incentives like with Sendosa? Is that allowed or is that frowned upon?
Yeah, great question. And Laura, Caitlin, if you have a more official answer, please go ahead. But yes, it is allowed by the FTC. G2, all of our integrations and strategies, we do look at FTC guidance and make sure that we are in compliance with that, and that you as our customers have the tools to be in compliance with that. Our legal team is always making sure that that's something that we are on top of and that we're providing you with compliance strategies. The FTC guidance has focused a lot on making sure that you're getting authentic reviews and not segmenting only to 5-star reviews, to your point, Angela. But we mark them as incented on our site so that it's very clear that they were an incentivized review, which they are because of the Sendoso gift. And with that, we are, I'm not a lawyer, but this is the short answer to yes, they are compliant with FTC guidelines as they stand today.
Okay, great. And is there a recommended amount for the Sendoso gift that you need to stay below?
Laura, do you know off the top of your head?
We delved into this a little bit. I don't believe that there's an official amount that there's not an official amount that G2 sets, I'll say. One of the fantastic things about partnering with a pure play best in class provider like Sendoso, there's a few great providers out there of gifting, and Sendoso is definitely one of those top providers, is they are actually responsible, not G2, thankfully for us, with keeping up with any regulation for different countries, things like that. So they are able to, through their platform, help us with any type of compliance that needs to be happening there. I know that there are certain recommendations for like different industries. Of course, if you're dealing with like government and things like that, there are specific guidelines, but G2 does not set a specific limit. So it is, again, kind of run through Sendoso, but also through, whatever you may have knowledge of for your specific industry or geography.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and actually, Rachel, you mentioned this a little bit about marking these as incentivized, but one of the reasons we launched the Sendoso integration is because we were seeing this behavior naturally happening in our client base. We were seeing people who wanted to incentivize with something other than a gift card. Maybe they wanted to do branded swag or some other kind of gift. And we didn't have a way to do that while still easily remaining compliant and marking it as incentivized. So this is our very first solution to do that, to ensure that if you go through this integration, you actually are remaining FTC compliant. Everything comes in as incentivized without you needing to submit any kind of separate documentation to us, which you can also do if you need us to help you ensure that you're marking correctly, but this will be automatic. And with the Sendoso integration, you can either choose to curate a selection of, kind of generic gifts from their gifting catalog, or if you are a warehousing customer with them, you can do custom swag. So you could have branded swag as an incentive, which is something that a lot of our customers really wanted to do. We all know how popular hoodies and socks and other fun gifts are, especially when you have a strong brand that people love to be a part of.
Thank you.
Great question, Angela.
All right, we're going to hop on to buyer intent. Oh, I should add one last thing. Apparently, Sendoso told us one of the most popular incentives is plants. So live plants. So, a whole new world of incentives with this integration. Yes, so buyer intent. This is where we're getting into the areas that can sometimes be metrics that you need to cross-reference in other systems, in integrations that you're using, or places outside of my G2. We do, of course, have lots of great actual intent data in my G2, lots of great information about the volume you're getting to your pages, categories, and so you can track some things like that. But when it comes to some of these scorecard for success metrics that we have, like how is it actually converting through your pipeline, turning into business? How is it performing on different channels where you might be using intent data to drive certain audiences, say on LinkedIn or things like that? These are areas where you're going to have to probably marry some G2 data with some data from other systems. So the types of things we're seeing people measure with intent typically are those directly driven leads from intent pipeline, as well as better performance on conversion rates. This really comes into play with a lot of your ads, whether you're using it on retargeting ads, on just kind of general targeted display. We'll talk about two different kinds of segmentation of intent audiences you can test, as well as average deal size, because you're actually getting people who are actively researching your product and probably very invested in this deal cycle. And then there are use cases for churn with net retention rates and making sure that you're monitoring for churn with intent. Another shout out to a previous office hours that we did, I think 2 months ago, which was all about how to use buyer intent for churn, and went in depth on some of the metrics that you might measure there and what to look for there. Pop on to my next slide. So again, we want to leave you with a couple of actions that you can take for each of these packages. So for intent, here's a couple of things that you might want to be thinking about if you're not already. Establishing baselines. I'm a marketer like you, definitely guilty of not always knowing my before. And if I don't know my before, really hard to measure my after. I know that's something that sometimes people struggle with just across all kinds of different marketing campaigns. So one thing that we really would look for to determine if the intent is making a measurable impact on your go-to-market is to know what your before is, or your baseline for whatever channel you're using or whatever type of content you might be using. And that way you can measure the after. We'll look at some before and after in the case study in just a moment. But one of the things that we do recommend, and I've got a typo on my slide there, but one of the things that we do recommend is to test audiences, but as well as creative, using things that you're learning from intent. So when we talk about segmenting and isolating those audiences, you might want to look at your general targeting that you were doing before adding intent data versus an audience that is driven by intent data, meaning you're targeting companies that were showing intent through G2 or through your category on G2. So that's one way to do it, is the actual audience or the companies. Another thing to do, which you can marry with audience or not, is the kind of topical interests. So what pages are people, who are people comparing you to, running campaigns for specific types of content, ideally targeting maybe the audience that's showing intent with the people that they're comparing you to, with maybe a compare report, which we'll talk about next, that actually addresses that topic. So you can use intent for the audience, but also to kind of narrow in on topics that people are interested in, and you can compare the performance of both of those. Top recommendation from our own go-to-market ops team is to just start simple, like using something like UTM tagging to make sure that when you go back to pull your reports in whatever system you use for your marketing operations reporting, that you maybe just use something simple like BI to tag all of the intent campaigns, and that way you can isolate those in your reporting. And then as a more kind of like spot check once in a while, once to twice a year, you can also do a match to look at your own pipeline data, maybe what's in your CRM, and then also the intent data that's coming in from G2. This is something that your account team can coach you on, maybe help you with the first time through and get you set up to do a comparison over time. Oftentimes we do these for you when you first purchase intent to give you a good idea of what your audience on G2 looks like, but you can also do it ongoing to maybe catch things you missed about overlap in pipeline and intent data, as well as just see how the data is performing for you overall. A couple of intent actions to take there, some easier than others. And then here is an example from one of our clients' metadata. And I just loved this example because it really spoke to that before and after and some of those exact specific metrics that we were just talking about. So the things that they were tracking to see how intent was impacting their go-to-market. They had the conversion rates, the deal sizes, the cost per lead. And again, these are all things that they needed to have that before in order to be able to see the after. And so they isolated those audiences. How are my typical campaigns performing without intent data? And then when I layer in intent data, what happens with this, maybe the same type of creative or the same type of platform, they're seeing these increases when they layer the intent data in. And we can share the deeper case study there as well. Also some perhaps spent, everybody's going to be different, but I think sometimes it's helpful to see like what kind of increases you might expect or maybe where you can benchmark yourself here. I'll give a quick pause. I know intent is a big topic and we have a short time today. So before I go into content, I'll give a quick pause to see if there's any questions there. All right. We can always come back at the end too. So for content, actually, some of the metrics would be similar. Some of the things that you might look at would be similar, and those before and afters would also be important. So compared to other types of content you use, how does using a G2 report, license report, for example, perform? You know, an ebook versus a G2 report, an ad creative for a general, you know, topic versus one that maybe showcases your badges, your rankings, other things that come from the G2 licensed content. And so what we're hoping to see and what a lot of our clients see is that improved performance when they layer in this voice of the customer kind of third-party validation, showing how they performed on G2, either against competitors or just in their category in general. Similar to that, the impressions from that campaign. And then one thing which we'll actually highlight a new feature on today is the time savings that you may have from using some of these G2 designed assets. So if you are a content customer, we do provide some amount of social assets like infographic type things with your package, but also you know that you can count on those reports every quarter to have something fresh to share out, maybe some stats to update, some new badges to put up, things like that, that you don't have to design yourself. And we've recently made it even easier to generate compare reports, which we'll show here in a minute, but that's another like time savings. You don't have to come to us if you want to run a new kind of comparison to make it a lot faster for you to produce like niche content that you may want for a certain new campaign that you might want to test or a deal that you're in that you didn't have existing content for. So a couple of recommended actions here. I put plan for report season because we watch the trends. We know what's going on with your reviews coming in and things like that. And we see these patterns of like right before report season, all of a sudden everybody's trying to get their reviews in so that they can, you know, have their position secured for their report. We really recommend that you just try to kind of smooth that over time and always have new things flowing in. But also we will remind you, we will give you many reminders via email and via your account team when report season is coming up, when there are review deadlines, things like that, just so that you can always be prepared to put your best foot forward with any performance there, as well as be prepared to update existing campaigns if you want to swap out badges for the latest badges, if you want to run, you know, prepare to run new reports, prepare a press release, any of that. So kind of just keep that planning cycle top of mind. Hopefully it makes it nice for you to have that built into your calendar all the time and know that you, again, have that quarterly fresh content coming out. Rachel also showed earlier on the My G2 metrics, a funnel that, or no, we didn't show the review recency. We have a review recency feature that we launched not long ago that is right within My G2 on your dashboard that will show you how you're trending on recent reviews and which ones are about to kind of drop off in terms of how they're influencing the algorithm. And again, that can show you just making sure you're keeping that smooth, steady flow over time, and that you're not degrading your performance based on like having not run a review campaign for, say, a whole year or something like that. So we're making that more accessible as well. And then another thing for me that comes to mind with content and measuring the impact is setting different goals based on where you're using it. And again, this is where you're kind of outside of my G2 and you're tracking things in other places. But we're going to look at a case study in just a minute that was really, a lot of it was about their ungated content. So things that they're showing in their sales decks during the sales process, sending out, and how that influenced their opportunity conversion and the impact that it made. But if you're using, G2 reports on, say, a gated landing page versus if you are testing the impact of adding them to a sales pitch deck or on your website, those might have different types of metrics. So you might have a quick matrix, just to think about the different places you can use content and map the appropriate goals for those, because it's a little bit squirrely to put a specific recommendation on tracking your content goals, because it's really about where you're activating your content and how you're using it. So one example of a client who heavily used G2 reports as part of their sales cycles, HighSpot, and some of the things they were doing, they were actually like asking about the impact of things. Did this have an impact on your purchasing decision? And tracking that with their opportunities, and tracking then the impact correlation to the closed one. So they had some really interesting metrics that are maybe a little bit atypical, that a little bit more sophisticated than we see, and also tracking influence on the opportunities and how many of those closed one opportunities interacted with some kind of G2 report, which is a licensed piece of content, during their sales cycle. In this case, I have to venture that HighSpot was probably using some of their own tools. They do have a content management system where they can track, assets that they sent during the sales cycle. But there are lots of different tools that help you do that, to see pieces of content people viewed, or if you do have a content management system like a HighSpot, like a Seismic, things like that, where you can pitch through there and actually measure your opportunities back to what types of content influence them. Also things that come up in like gong trackers, things like that. There's a lot of different ways that you can start to look at what types of content are influencing those opportunities. And I thought this was a really neat example of, they integrated it in really a lot of places in their sales cycles. Let's see, how are we on time? We've got a little time left. We did skip through the list. We don't have a lot of market intelligence customers on the line today, so we're probably going to breeze through this one a little bit. But if you did have market intelligence, that is our market strategy tool. And that is where we're looking to really influence outside of G2, because what we're looking to do is take your learnings from G2 and apply them to your go-to-market overall. So we're looking to do things like increase your competitive win rates, your overall satisfaction scores, which may show up in G2 via your reviews and ratings, as well as your overall market and category share. So this is our competitive intelligence tool, where you're looking at yourself versus your competitors in your category and across the market, and trying to determine things like, who am I taking market share from? Who am I losing market share to? What is the sentiment? What do people think about me versus my competitors? And then take that information to transform it into go-to-market assets, maybe product improvements, overall like expansion into new categories. So this one, again, is really a long game of like using the data that you're getting from voice of the customer on my G2 and applying it across your go-to-market. I think we all know competitive win rates is not like as easy to measure and attribute as, say, clicks on a LinkedIn campaign. So these are more long-term and strategic goals. We're going to open it up for a little bit of discussion here. So anybody can come off. If we've got other G2ers on, feel free to chime in if you have questions. And we just had a couple of thought starters too. If you don't have questions from that content, we have some questions for you, and we would love to hear from you as well on any ideas you have on how we can make this reporting easier, how else you're measuring the impact, as well as what you wish you could see. So with that, we will open it up for any questions, comments, thoughts.
I'll jump in. I'd love to be able to run the Looker reports myself.
Angela, can you say more? What Looker reports?
So it's that we get from our CSM or account manager, that the report of all the reviews gathered in a period of time.
Is that, go on, sorry.
It would be nice to be able to run it ourselves versus having to reach out and say, please, can you do this for me?
Yeah.
Or have it scheduled to come once a month. Like, I'd love to have been able to do it from, the start of a review period to the end of a review period.
And is that, Angela, including the raw reviews themselves, all the detail within your reviews that you're getting, or is it something else?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, that's something that we've heard and that we do know is something that is kind of a gap today in my G2. It's definitely something that's on my radar, so I'm taking a note here to see if that's something that we can improve on for you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Not that there's anything wrong with it. It would just be nice.
Oh, it's great
Nice
feedback. It's great feedback. And to your point, that self-service ability to pull it yourself at any time absolutely makes sense. And I am curious, how are you using that today, if I might ask, and how would it help to be able to pull that down by certain time periods?
It allows us to be able to analyze what the people are saying, to send it to our product feedback teams and give them feedback as to what's working well, what's not working, especially what's not working, what we can improve upon ourselves.
Perfect. That's definitely something that we can improve in the product side, and that's something that I'm taking a note on here. I'd also mention, Laura alluded very briefly at the end of this about market intelligence as an offering, and I'll just mention it as it might be something interesting to you because it's, if you're looking at that kind of data on what can we see in our reviews to help our product team, market intelligence gives you that data for you, but also for your competitors, as well as automated themes on insights of things like what are the top likes and dislikes in your product versus competitors. That might be interesting. It also looks at traffic and kind of trends over time in engagement and the types of companies that are looking at you versus your competitive firms. So just might be something interesting depending on how much investment you have in that space and if you have a desire to go any deeper.
Okay, thank you.
Great feedback. Thank you, Angela.
While we're waiting to see if we have any other questions, comments, ideas, we have a couple of things that just while we had some of you here today, we wanted to highlight. So we've released a couple of new features that are really aimed at delivering even more impact on your go-to-market. So we included those today. Rachel mentioned the new review spotlight widget, which gives you more control over how your reviews show up any place that you can embed HTML. So on your website, the blog, other kind of landing pages, things like that that you have. Got a little snapshot of it here, but it really allows you to add your brand colors and different kind of formatting and style in so that you can showcase those reviews in their best light. Released yesterday, so breaking news. You're probably some of the first to hear about it. For our content customers, I mentioned this, easier ways to self-generate compare reports so that you can mix and match, especially if you're in a lot of different categories. There are so many combinations of different comparisons you can run for compare reports. So you can now kind of self-select some of these and run them in an easier to generate way. Again, kind of, Angela, getting at that self-serve. So you don't have to ask us anymore. You can actually do some of this yourself. Which is good for you and good for your G2 team. So it's good for all of us. And then if you're a HubSpot customer, we did recently release, I think it was 5 or 6 different items that were updated in the HubSpot integration, some of which are aimed at helping you better measure the impact. And so there's, I think I can't see my notes here on my screen, but the sourced by filter is one thing too that is going to help you with knowing which things are coming into HubSpot via G2. So there's documentation on that goes into all 5 or 6 different things that were improved, but there's a number of different things there to add more value if you are using the HubSpot integration. So those are a few topics you may have missed. We release, you may not know this, we release new features regularly at my G2. We're not on a release schedule, so you're not waiting for like a summer release, a winter release. We're adding goodness all the time. Rachel's team stays very busy, so wanted to highlight these for you. think we're almost at the top of the hour. Are there any last questions we can answer for anyone today? All right. Well, if not, I think we can wrap up. Definitely feel free to reach out to Rachel, myself, your team at G2, Caitlin, if you have any questions about what you saw today. We're happy to help you with specifics around your account or connect you to the right people who can. And just as we're wrapping up, don't forget to join us for future office hours. Check out G2 University for more on-demand training. And we'd love to see you here again next month. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.